7, shifting academic mindset in the learning partnership. In previous presentations and chapters, we've touched on the importance in playing the role as an ally in a learning partnership with students and how to build that relationship with students. The first step in helping students take ownership over their learning is to give them feedback and space for reflection. Not all students will act on that feedback or be strategic about what they do with it, but it's our job to help them believe in themselves first, to help them make progress towards using their feedback and taking ownership of their learning process. Not all students recognize that it's worth it to put the effort into their learning, and it's our job to help them realize that on their own. We must create what they call an academic mindset, and using encouraging statements like, I belong to this learning community, I can be successful, my work is valuable to me, and my growth will be worth the effort. Some students already have negative mindsets on their learning coming in and might not react as positively due to their belief that they can't or won't be successful regardless of their efforts. They may quit at the first sign of a challenge or convince themselves that they don't have what's necessary to move forward in their learning. Most of what determines mindset has to do with the sense of belonging. Students that feel like they belong in their learning community have a higher chance to develop an academic mindset and vice versa. Many of us don't understand how to create a positive mindset in students or shift them from a negative to positive, and we end up making a lot of trial and error decisions. To successfully encourage or create an academic mindset, it takes generally 4 identity frames. And these elements make up our internal schema that we talked more about in Chapter 2. The first is a sense of mastery and competence as learners from past experiences or creating a sense of preparedness. Also, belief in ability of having control over our world, a deep belief in ability to achieve what we set forth to complete with effort, or that effort will yield success, and an explanation for the reasons we tell ourselves why we weren't successful. The thoughts we have based on these 4 concepts will be stored as patterns when we approach a new learning situation, and this is what determines mindset. This is what lets our brain know when something is worth the effort or not, resulting in either a fixed mindset, one that won't take risk, or a growth mindset, one that is willing to take a risk. It's easy to think of a mindset as an extension of educational values, but most learning institutions have structural inequities that determine who will be a high or a low achiever, which are typically set along racial lines. These inequities shape how students perceive themselves and how they think about success in education. They shape how they feel about themselves as learners, which can then lead to a fixed mindset. The idea of, if I'm meant to fail, why should I even try? Most of it is a product of lack of interventions at schools that don't give students the tools to catch up and let them fall further behind down on their academic journeys. Also, microaggressions and negativity bias have a huge play in this. Students can further develop fixed mindsets from the microaggressions they experience from teachers, framing their differences as failures rather than assets based on cultural differences, linguistic differences, or any other disadvantages. This creates a negativity bias, meaning that the brain will remember and respond to negative experiences up to 3 times more than it will to positive experiences. Some forms of microaggressions in schools are microassaults, or the misuse of power in subtle ways to create different outcomes based on race or class, like giving different punishments for the same actions to students based on race. Micro-insults, or being insensitive to culturally or linguistically diverse students, like mispronouncing a name and refusing to learn the proper pronunciation. Or micro-invalidations, negating a person of color's experiences and ignoring their funds of knowledge, like refusing to recognize structural racialization or implicit bias and accusing people of playing the race card. But here is how we can help shift that mindset that's created by these experiences. We can use validations. A culturally responsive teacher will validate a student's experiences in the socio-political context, not trivializing issues of racism or language discrimination or any other socioeconomic injustice, and recognizing that these events are real and that students are not just being overly sensitive. Creating self-efficacy and a feedback loop, strengthening self-efficacy to help students push back and build strong academic mindsets, and encouraging students to say, I think I can. My abilities will grow as I put in the effort, and I can and will succeed. And it takes framing or reframing mistakes as information. Students with a fixed mindset will believe that mistakes only confirm their lack of abilities. We can help by encouraging students to see mistakes as opportunities to grow and as information on how they can improve their outcomes in their next try. We need to see mistakes as good and not as bad or defining. To help students create a counter narrative about identity as learners is another way that we can help shift mindset. Students will have a story about why they can't learn, and we must help them develop a narrative about why they can learn to run counter to what their brain wants to tell them already. This new narrative has to run counter to the one they have, which may change day to day, which is why it has to be based on reality and not just be an inspirational or a positive thinking strategy. To help students create their own powerful counter narratives, we can introduce them through stories or poetry, such as Sandra Cisneros' only daughter. In this work, she tells of her identity as the only daughter to a Mexican father who believed that she was meant to marry to be successful. She counters this narrative by believing that she could just do as she pleased, since she wouldn't be expected to be a success on her own anyway. By creating this counter narrative, she ended up following her passion and was successful in the end. We can lead a discussion to talk about the contrast in the way that culture is depicted in the media, and set up a narrative redesign as a collaborative learning exercise by including dominant beliefs about a student and finding something that will counter them. We can also use images, quotes, or poetry to ignite students' imagination of what is possible. We can find images that will communicate a positive sense of success and accomplishment and have them readily available for students to look at, such as on the walls of a classroom. We can notice and acknowledge students when they're acting accordingly to the elements of academic mindset by highlighting their progress or letting them know that their hard work is paying off, and helping students connect to their current expertise and competencies, helping students share their expertise with others, and building a sense of self-concept and competency. This can help them remember what it feels like to get good at something and make a link between effort and results. We can also help them interrupt negative self-talk by not just giving them praise or a pep talk, but by showing them how to interrupt these negative internal statements to replace them with more positive ones. All in all, shifting mindset can help students develop critical hope and recognizing their true potential.